I'm Addison Smith. Welcome to In Focus. Several weeks back, you might have noticed the gas prices at the pump had finally begun to tick down ever so slightly. Still remaining at record highs, but just down enough to give you a tiny sigh of relief. But that did not last long because gas prices immediately shot back up, going back to near their peak under Joe Biden. So what happened? Well, Biden depleted our strategic oil reserves to artificially bring gas prices down as midterm elections approach. The Democrats don't have anything substantive to run on, you see. Crime, drugs, the southern border, national security, inflation, all of that is in the worst shape under their command. So the only solution they have is to play dirty. Right before elections, Democrats have transferred student loan debt onto taxpayers, begun deporting only Venezuelan foreign nationals since they're the least likely to back the left. After all, they fled leftism, and the Democrats have also arbitrarily manipulated prices at the pump. And now they're doing it again. Joe Biden's administration has just announced that they are planning to release 15 million barrels of oil from our reserves right before the November elections kick off. This after he pledged to release 180 million barrels of oil earlier this year. And according to the White House, this 15 million would reportedly complete that. Now, keep in mind, back in August, our reserves hit their lowest level since 1985, nearly a 4-decade low. That was in August. And he has now released 15 million more barrels of oil. How will we replenish our reserves sufficiently? What are we going to buy more back from other countries? How much is that going to cost? Why can't we just get that oil that is in the U.S. ground right now on our soil? We wouldn't need to deplete our reserves if we brought back drilling. But Biden isn't going to do that. Instead, they're just going to keep dipping into our emergency reserves. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was asked why Biden is doing this right before midterms, conveniently enough. Here is her typical run-of-the-mill word salad.
The gas prices are going down again. Why would the U.S. need another SPR release from that 180 million barrels that you already announced? Why would you need that now if prices are already dropping?
So again, I'm not going to get ahead of the president. As you know, there's going to be an announcement tomorrow on the president's policy, his next move forward on what he's going to do to help the American people, continue to give them a little bit of a breathing room.
Why would they need it? Why would they do it? Because they need votes. That is the simple answer. They want to create a superficial solution to a deep-seated problem. And unfortunately, a lot of people will fall for this. They'll fall for it hook, line, and sinker. Aside from manipulating gas prices to gain votes, Democrats are also running hard on abortion. Biden gave a speech yesterday at the DNC's Restore Roe rally in Washington, D.C., but he accidentally started talking about gay marriage, confusing it with abortion. Here's a clip of that.
The right that I pushed hard and it finally got changed, the married couples in the privacy of their bedroom, I'm thinking about the Dobbs decision. Imagine, well, I'll get to that in a second.
Oh, Joe. Quote, the right that I pushed hard and I finally got changed to marry couples in the privacy of their bedroom. Excuse me, the Mary. I'm thinking about the Dobbs decision. Imagine, well, I'll get back to that in a second, end quote. Yet another famous phrase from our president. Now, on to what he actually talked about at the rally. Biden went on to state why it is so important to vote for Democrats in the midterm elections, claiming that women lost a fundamental right and more.
Establishing a fundamental constitutional right to choose. Nearly 50 years later, on June 24th of this year, the court issued the Dobbs decision. A woman and all across the country, starting in my house, lost the fundamental right. I want to remind us all that Roe was overturned after 50 years. And I'm asking you, by the way, it's not just affecting your young generation. It's affecting children, moms, grandmoms, grandpops, all the entire generations, all the way across the board. And I remember asking, I want you to remember that the final say does not rest in the court now. It does not rest with extremist Republicans in Congress.
The overturning of Roe is, quote, affecting children, moms, grandmoms, grandpops, and all the entire generations, end quote. On that, he's actually correct. He is actually right. It does affect all of them. It affects children by ending their life. It affects moms, grandmoms, and granddads by nullifying those titles. And it affects future generations by ensuring that there will be no future generations, because we are now below replacement level for childbirth. A lot is at stake, needless to say, in these midterm elections. Joe Biden and the Democrats know this. Joe Biden sent out a tweet yesterday saying, quote, "We must elect more Democrats to the Senate and keep control of the House. If we do that, here's the promise I make to you and the American people. The first bill I will send to Congress will be to codify Roe versus Wade, and when Congress passes it, I will sign it in January." So lives are quite literally on the line in these November elections. Make sure you vote accordingly, America. Congressman Buddy Carter joins me now to discuss all of this. Congressman, it's great to have you on the show. I want to get to the oil, the releasing oil from the reserves in just a minute. But first, Biden's rally yesterday touting abortion, vowing that he will codify Roe v. Wade in January if Democrats have a successful midterm election. This is quite the message to conservatives to get out and vote.
There's no question about it. I mean, let's face it, of everything that's going on right now as a result of the failed policies of the Biden administration, inflation, gas, grocery, rent, housing prices up, crime running rampant, the southern border and illegal immigrants coming across, drugs coming across that are killing our citizens at the rate of 200 every day, poisoning our citizens. The education failing us right now. Of all those things, now this administration wants to focus on abortion. This has been decided by the Supreme Court. Dobbs' decision put this back to the states. Why don't they understand that? For him to concentrate on this right now shows you that the Democratic Party, led by Joe Biden, they're out of touch with America.
Yeah, they are absolutely out of touch. We see it, most importantly, I think most crucially, with these cultural issues like abortion, like transgenderism. But we also see it on the economic issues with inflation and with gas, the price of gas and energy and so on. Biden's releasing 15 million more barrels of oil from our strategic reserves. And I say over and over again, those reserves are for emergencies. Why does he keep doing it, Congressman?
Well, obviously, he's using it as a political tool, and you're absolutely right. It was for emergencies. That's what it was intended for. That's what it is supposed to be for. But he's using it as a political tool. And, oh, by the way, yeah, he's doing it to give Americans relief and give them relief just before the election. He's using it as a political tool. There's no question about that. You know, here we are. We've got the highest gas prices that we've had in 4 decades, and our strategic petroleum reserves are at the lowest that they've been in 4 decades. That's the way that this president is running this country. That's why I truly believe this war on American energy is crushing our economy, and that they are intentionally doing this so that they can build it back as a socialist country.
Well, and on the note of out of touch, I have a clip here of Nancy Pelosi doing an interview saying that she doesn't agree that with the polls showing that Americans care broadly about crime soaring and inflation soaring. Let's play a clip of that.
So let's talk about rising inflation concerns along with crime, giving momentum, new momentum to Republicans after the Democrats were closing the gap, the historic gap.
Yes.
You and the president have done so much in terms of domestic concerns, the economy. So why is this message, why do you think the president has gotten this message through to the voters?
Well, first of all, let me say that I think that much of what you've said I don't agree with. That is to say, the New York Times poll, I think, is an outlier poll. you cite one poll, but all the other
It's
polls.
also the Real
are
Clear
different.
Politics average
No.
is showing similar issues.
No, but that was one that brought down the average, and it was an outlier. It wasn't even that big a sample. So I dismiss that.
Oh, I dismiss that. Well, the American people don't dismiss it, Congressman Carter. That's why the poll is there, after all.
You know, once again, Nancy Pelosi is one of the most out-of-touch politicians that we have here in America. I mean, here we have someone who is living in the past, has no grasp of the present, and certainly has no solutions for the future. That's what Nancy Pelosi is all about here. You know, for her to say that people aren't concerned, she's certainly not going through the 1st Congressional District like I am, because when I'm traveling throughout this district, and I am throughout this district all the time, people are telling me their concerns: inflation, crime, education, southern border, drugs. That's what people are concerned with. These Democrats and the Democratic leadership, are completely out of touch.
Yeah, they just want to trans your kid and strip you of your parental rights and transition to unsustainable green energy. That's pretty much what they're putting on the ballot. Oh, and codifying Roe versus Wade, a message to Republicans to, again, get out and vote in November. Congressman Carter, we appreciate your work that you do. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the New York Post drops another piece about Hunter Biden and his shady overseas business dealings, this time with a Russian oligarch and
Gretchen Whitmer is the most radical governor in America. She indoctrinates our children, supports criminals over law enforcement, and she's crushing our businesses and our jobs. To save our state, we have to change direction. I want a Michigan where kids learn without politics, play without being scared, and one day get a good job without leaving our state. I'm Tudor Dixon. Together, we can bring back Michigan.
It's time to stop the 1931 Michigan law that bans abortion, because women could die. When complicated pregnancies arise, doctors need to act. That's why we must stop politicians from interfering with women and their most personal medical decisions. To keep women safe, healthcare experts agree we need yes on Proposal 3 to restore the rights we had under Roe. Because lives are at stake. Vote yes on 3.
Stop the politicians from Wade versus Roe, so you women can have the right to do an abortion. There's something wrong here. I mean, the politicians are in everything in our lives, forcing how to do EV cars, stopping our oils, fentanyl coming in. Our kids are being taught rogue stuff. Men turning into women, women turning into men. They're showing Satanism in school. But don't let the politicians get involved in your Roe and Wade. They're so full of it. And if you people believe that, you can just vote Democrat. You're going to find out eventually you won't even matter about abortion. Because what they're going to do to us is just going to be just unknown. They want to exterminate us anyway, so you just do what you want to do. But if you're going to be in con that you don't want the government to get involved, they're in everything. This is what the Democrats want. They want total control over your life. And this is part of their big joke. And for these doctors right here that you're seeing, all it is money. That's all it is. They got money. They can make money off of this. That's the only reason why they want to vote for, yeah, let's do it, you know? They're horrible, these people are. All it is money. It's not your life. It's money. You die in a doggone operating table, they still get paid. They don't care. Wake up, people. Understand what's going on here. Your Democrats are really putting it to you. Restore your rights. Yeah, right. It's a smokescreen, people. That's all it is. You better wake up. You better wake up to find out what's going on here. You know, the best way not to get pregnant is close your legs or get condoms or a contraceptive. You know, it's the best way to do it. I don't know why people would want to do anything anyway, the way the diseases are going on. But, all right, that's up to you. Let's continue the video.
Well, the pressure continues to mount on Hunter Biden because so does the evidence of his corruption. A Hunter Biden-linked real estate firm got at least $100 million from Russian oligarch Elena Baturina between 2012 and 2014. Baturina is a close pal to Vladimir Putin, so it looks like the Biden family is more guilty of colluding with Russia than Trump ever was. The New York Post reports that Baturina paid at least $40 million to Rosemont Realty for office investments across the country in states like Texas, Colorado, Alabama, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. The evidence for this being revealed in deal-related emails that were originally obtained by the Daily Mail. Rosemont is Hunter Biden's real estate firm. It is directly tied to him, not indirectly. And Russian oligarchs, this Russian oligarch, Baturina, were reportedly shoveling tens of millions of bucks to him. So more dirt on Hunter Biden. All of the other dirt is on his laptop, the laptop the FBI has had for years. They've had his hard drive for years now, and yet nothing has come of it as far as consequences for his actions go, aside from the obvious public shaming, of course. Now, in response to this, Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley has penned a letter to AG Merrick Garland, FBI Director Chris Wray, and Delaware Attorney David Weiss, condemning the agency's continued silence on the overwhelming evidence of Hunter's corruption, of which his dad, the big guy, is heavily complicit in by all available evidence. Joining me now with more on this is Western correspondent for The Federalist, Tristan Justice. Tristan, it's great to have you back on the show, as always. The pressure is mounting on Hunter Biden because, as I said, the evidence is mounting on Hunter Biden. Tell me more. You wrote an entire article about this letter that Chuck Grassley sent to the FBI. What did he say?
Right, yeah, Senator Chuck Grassley is really demanding answers from the FBI on really 2 years of misconduct. We now know from multiple whistleblower reports since May of this year that the FBI actively sought to cover up damaging information on the Biden family during the 2020 election. And we know from Facebook or Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg that Facebook actively suppressed stories about Hunter Biden going into the 2020 election at the FBI's behest. And so Senator Chuck Grassley is really demanding answers now on what the FBI had been doing since October 2020 when the whistleblowers came out describing the Biden family's long laundry list of conflicts of interest going into the White House and what the FBI is really doing to investigate that.
Now, what is the FBI doing to investigate that? Because we've heard the news for the past several weeks is, Hunter Biden could be criminally prosecuted now. He could be criminally prosecuted. Something's coming. I've always maintained that I don't think anything's going to happen to him because he's the most protected man in America next to the President of the United States. What has the FBI been doing? Have they even been doing anything?
Well, that's a good question. From multiple whistleblower reports this summer that we know the FBI is actually trying to do nothing when it comes to Hunter Biden. So it was interesting. The Washington Post published that report that the FBI has enough evidence to indict Hunter Biden. I think it's in a large part trying to save face going after the president's son here, especially after multiple whistleblowers showing that the FBI is trying to really dismiss charges against Biden all along. Meanwhile, we know the FBI is amplifying damaging information on Donald Trump. We had, of course, an unprecedented FBI raid on the former president back in August over the Presidential Records Act, which is rarely prosecuted. And of course, if Trump is guilty of this crime, then so was Obama, taking troves and troves of documents back to the Obama Foundation. So really, we have a two-tiered justice system really coming through with the Department of Justice conduct here, and that's really coming forward this fall.
Well, yeah, and on the note of a cover-up, it's not just that they've covered up, prosecuting Hunter Biden or postponed it or tried to avoid doing it. They actively worked with social media companies like Facebook, like Twitter, to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story when it first broke. And Mark Zuckerberg admitted this on Joe Rogan's podcast. Said the FBI came to us, said, look out for Russian propaganda, Russian misinformation, wink, wink, nod, nod. And so the FBI, far from just, avoiding giving Hunter Biden his due justice, they've actively used taxpayer dollars, might I add. They've used taxpayer dollars at work to cover for him and to make sure that the world wouldn't find out about this story, but we did.
You're exactly right. We had open regime government collusion with big tech oligarchs in Silicon Valley to directly influence the 2020 election. And then Democrats are all of a sudden surprised when conservatives claim that the election was rigged. I mean, we had, and now we have Mark Zuckerberg coming out and acknowledging that this happened. And of course, reading between the lines, everyone knew something was happening when Facebook and Twitter were colluding to suppress stories about Hunter Biden weeks before the 2020 election, as millions of Americans went to the polls. Remember, we had record level turnout in the form of early voting and mail-in voting during the 2020 election. And so when those Hunter Biden stories dropped in October, Americans were already going to the polls and casting their ballots. And so what we have here is real open collusion between government actors and big tech oligarchs. And of course, the 2020 election was absolutely rigged.
Yeah, it absolutely was. There was obvious evidence. I mean, all you had to do was open your eyes and just look at all the swing states that suspiciously stopped counting votes, states like Pennsylvania that violated their state constitution, all the people caught on camera stuffing the ballot boxes. We have all of that evidence. Now, as far as Hunter Biden goes, where do you think, Tristan, this is slated to go? That's something I continually wonder. I continually to be pessimistic about Hunter Biden getting his due justice. What do you think based off of your reporting?
Well, Chuck Grass's letter really outlined, quote, voluminous evidence that the FBI had in their possession. And so the evidence might be so overwhelming that the Department of Justice has to issue an indictment. Of course, I think the agency is trying to do everything in its power to make sure that doesn't happen. But look, I think the evidence here could be overwhelming for some type of indictment where we see Hunter Biden really leveraging the family name to the tune of millions and millions of dollars for the entire Biden family. Remember that Hunter Biden text to his daughter describing how for 30 years he's making money for his entire family. And of course, he was doing all of that, leveraging his former vice president father while he was in the White House and as vice president, and now while he was pursuing the White House once again. And so the evidence here might be overwhelming, and we could see progress on this in the coming months.
Tristan Justice from The Federalist, big fan of your reporting. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Meanwhile, I wanted to get to this. A North Carolina athlete, female volleyball player, was injured by her transgender competitor after a spike ball hit her in the face. She received severe head and neck injuries from this. She's currently displaying long-term concussion symptoms and is reportedly having vision issues. I want to bring in Riley Gaines to talk about this. She's the swimmer from Kentucky who tied with Leah Thomas in the NCAA swimming championship. Riley, it's great to have you on the show. Obviously, with something like swimming, what you were going up against with Leah Thomas, the man, it's not really a physical sport where you risk injury from a competitor, but that is a big problem in more contact sports like volleyball or maybe softball or something, where girls like this woman in North Carolina is facing severe head and neck injuries because they decided to let a man play her and compete against her in her sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think this proves that it's not only the threat of losing opportunities and scholarships and titles and the privacy of your locker room. This is about safety at this point.
Yeah, it's about safety, and that is one of the arguments that conservatives have really been hammering on. It puts these women at risk. Also in their dressing rooms, Riley, I know when you swam against Leah Thomas, that was an issue that stirred up. You don't want a man in the restroom, in the locker room, changing with you around. You just don't want that.
No, and I don't feel like that's asking too much. That's the bare minimum. Girls should be delegated that changing space where they can be vulnerable and they don't have to expose themselves in front of a male body, or a male body is not exposed to them. We had this happening in Vermont a couple weeks ago. It was a 14-year-old girl who was chosen to speak out. And since she's chosen to speak out, her dad was fired from his job immediately. They're facing all kinds of repercussions. And when she spoke out about a transgender athlete in the female locker room, they kicked all the females out of the locker room.
Yeah, it's totally backwards and inverted. And it brings up another great point, because the fairness argument and the safety argument, those are very important, valid arguments. But the real winning argument to all of this, the only way I think that this is that will put an end to this madness, Riley, is if we make the argument that it's not true. When you let Leah Thomas swim against you, that's no longer women's swimming. When you let this North Carolina volleyball player compete against this girl and send her in a long-term concussion protocol, that is no longer women's volleyball. This is no longer women's sports if we're letting males compete in it. I think that's the winning argument that we have to make here. Your thoughts?
Very true. You're exactly right. The women's category has turned into this mixed or open category. Well, of course, the men's category is protected. The women's category is what's at jeopardy. The integrity of women's sports are totally going to be lost if this continues.
And how do you feel seeing all of this now? I know you have since graduated from the University of Kentucky, but this issue is not going anywhere. If anything, it's only getting worse right now by the day. Where do you foresee this going? How do you feel looking at all of this, seeing this poor girl in North Carolina, women who are following in footsteps like you, pursuing their dreams and competing in these sports? How do you feel seeing all of this happen?
Right, you're exactly right. This is amplifying. This is something that's, one, it's completely underreported. There are so many instances day by day occurring, and I think a common argument is, there's only a few cases. That's not true anymore. This is happening across all sports, across all levels, all ages, and it's totally underreported. But I do think all of these instances are bringing to light this issue, and people will reach a tipping point. Take, for instance, this Ulta Beauty commercial that happened a couple days ago. The women are mad, and I think that's great. We're making them. With it all coming to light, we're reaching a tipping point.
Yeah, I certainly agree that we are. Where do you foresee this? How do you foresee this playing out in the midterm elections? I know Republicans are making this a key issue, as they should, protecting women and protecting women's sports, and really, at the bottom of it all, standing up for basic truth. Do you think that we're going to start, after this tipping point, hindsight, do you think that we're going to start winning some cultural ground?
I think so. I think to so many people, this just measures out to insanity. Really, 95% of the world doesn't agree with having men and women's spaces. These women categories were created for a reason. They need to be a protected category. And when we're infiltrating men back into these spaces, people can recognize that is wrong. And it's totally unfair, and it's not progressive. This is something doing a total 180. So, in fact, it's regressive.
Yeah, that's right. Riley Gaines, really appreciate you joining the show today. An honor to have you on. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Coming up next, the CDC is expected to vote on adding the COVID vaccine to the list of required shots for kids. There is an ulterior motive behind this, and it's not for children's health or safety. We'll explain after the break.